when we had the money, we were able to hire Claudia Swenson, who is a clinical pharmacist, as our coordinator. She has had 45 years of experience in nursing. Her job is specifically not. Anyway, her jobs included training and recruiting volunteers. She also is the initial person that goes out to the community and visits the client that may be in need of some help. She also assesses that person, and uncannily she meets the person, matches up with a volunteer, and her matches are just unbelievable. It's how she does that is really wonderful. She also is responsible for keeping track of the hours that are each volunteer does. And she also assists on the initial visit along with the volunteer, so that the transition from her initial visit is carried over with the volunteer visit. At this time, I would like to ask the TLC volunteers that are present tonight to stand up. Not everybody was here, but I would like to recognize you. So please stand up. These people are the heart of this program. We couldn't do it without them. And it's really interesting because there have been some really true friendships established through this program. Also, before I leave, just on a personal, I like to, we have a kind of advisory committee that we get to meet one day a month. And I like to recognize them as well. We have Claudia Swenson, who is our coordinator. Michelle Jerome, the community nurse, she's here someplace. There she is. Sharon Lucas, executive director of Chelan Valley Hope. And I don't believe Joan Milner is here. But also a special thanks to Mary Murphy. She's not just a TLC advisor, she's our grant writer, and she spends a lot of time just doing little things that turn into big projects that always brings money, which is nice. If you look over on the countertop, there are some little pink bags, and they have some yellow mums in it, because I thought of them that sun shines, and that's what your people do for me. You bring me sunshine. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. It's been a fun but busy year. It's been great to have just wonderful volunteers come in from the community. I just feel so fortunate. If you need written things about tender loving care after I talk, there is a brochure back here. Be sure to take them. We're in definite need of clients, and we're in definite need of more volunteers. We've got 4 men, and I could use 2 or 3 more men today for male clients who would really prefer to have their care provided by somebody of the same sex, and that's a beautiful thing. So as Kathy mentioned, I originally was going to be a volunteer for tender loving care, and then I submitted my resume, and they thought maybe with the management and patient care qualifications, maybe this would be a better position. So that's sort of how that story worked. In terms of the integrity of the concept for the program, it's very strong. There was work done in the 1980s by Robert Wood Johnson Foundation showing that non-medical volunteer visits reduces hospitalizations as well as ER visits. And you'd wonder, well, why is that? It's that second set of eyes, other than the family members, people that are too close to people, to see subtle changes. And I know when I go and do a visit with Michelle, you know, we each see different things as we look at people, and so it's a blessing to bring our volunteers into people's homes. I have some notes here. It was way too much information, but in terms of the volunteers, everyone is vetted. Everyone has references, they have background check. We spend at least 1 to 2 hours with each volunteer, one-on-one, to go over policies and procedures and what to do in an emergency situation. Hand hygiene, we go through the entire list of those things. There are basic skills in terms of caring for people, and also confidentiality. In a community this small, people need to know that their relationship is confidential. We do not ever wear tender loving care pins in public. At this meeting we do because we want to be recognized here, but we don't talk at any public occasions about our relationships. It's totally confidential. I think that our needs are really just to continue that message and knowing that stories that we tell in public will only be generalizations about those relationships, that those relationships are definitely the heart of our program. And that's where we want to be. In terms of our status right now, we're aiming for 30 trained volunteers. We have 24 on board at this time. We've had a few people who need to step back. And that happens when you have volunteers and they're retired and they have lives, you know, we have that situation. And so I'm always having that need for more people to step forward and see what you think. We ask for a 6-month commitment. We ask for 2 to 4 hours a month. It isn't a lot of time. Some of our volunteers spend, you know, twice and 4 times that much time, but we try to keep the requirements pretty low. So I think that's something that perhaps you'll be, if you're not interested, you maybe have a friend or someone new in town who would really like to get connected in Chelan. So think about that. In terms of our senior client referrals, the only thing that is required is that the client says, I'd be willing to speak to the Tender Loving Care Coordinator. And we encourage family to be available at those visits, because this is not just a relationship between the senior and the volunteer, but the family unit, because their interests and their cares also need to be addressed. Some of the major things that we do for people are companionship. Isolation and loneliness are deadly. They cause people to health to go down. And so that's a major issue. Another one is transportation. You know, in the small community, you can pay $30 to go from a place in Chelan to the hospital. So costs of transportation, even, you know, if it's not EMT driven, are fairly high. And so we help people with transportation to appointments. We also work, a major emphasis this year has been working with Link Plus and qualifying people here in Chelan for Link Plus services. This is a little bus that Ken Young often drives that takes people to their doctor appointments and to senior meals with no cost. And if you need to do a shopping date with Ken, it's $3 round trip versus a taxi fare ride. So again, as we work more in the community, we're going to be working to improve life for all the seniors as well as those that we're working with. In terms of our current clients, we have 24 active clients. We have worked with over 40 people in the area, but these are very fragile in general seniors. Most of them have multiple chronic health problems. And so some attrition is part of what we have to face. And some of our clients go on to assisted living at Heritage, and we now have an arrangement with Amanda that if they've had a TLC volunteer, that volunteer can continue to see them and be their friend within the assisted living situation. And so, again, we want to keep that continuity of relationship is really important. Let's see, what else am I going to talk about? Assessments. We do an assessment that's fairly thorough. Our volunteers are non-medical, and so they cannot do direct hands-on assistance. And so we need to be able to see that a person can rise from a chair with just a hand on the shoulder for encouragement, but we're not trained to lift or, in emergencies, sure, we'll put our bodies on the line. But, in general, we want to make sure it's a safe situation. We need to understand their medical conditions. Michelle Jerome and Joe Milner and I often discuss patients, and we often co-visit patients who need both nursing as well as volunteer services. And so that's been a wonderful thing. Our in-home services committee has really functioned to help us coordinate care. And we hope that we'll continue to do more coordination here in the community with new services from the hospital. Paramedicine is coming our way, medics doing house calls for people after emergency room or hospital discharge. And so there's going to be ongoing needs for coordination for our in-home services and the community. I think that's probably the most important things that we can talk about, other than a couple of stories. And Conchi said no, and I say, yeah, I know, I'm over time. But it is all about the heart relationship. We have two quick stories. One is a story of a gentleman who was isolated. He rarely went out of his home at Manson Villa. He got a TLC volunteer. That volunteer had the same interests. He was interested in motorcycles, interested in computers, interested in financial issues. We brought in this volunteer that basically brought a friend into his life, brought in those a financial planner with help funds from Chelan Valley Hope to help with financial planning. And so just a win-win. So we have a very happy individual. Another volunteer who is not here tonight has walked through 2 hospitalizations, 1 assisted living issue, and has been become fundamentally a part of the family. And that client, whether she's in a hospital situation or whatever, her volunteer has walked the path with her. So we have brochures in the back and questions at that point. Thanks so much.